Determining the scope and coverage of a labor helpline is a crucial step in establishing an effective and efficient service for workers. The scope refers to the range of issues and services that the helpline will address, while coverage refers to the geographical area and target audience that the helpline will serve. This section will provide guidance on how to determine the scope and coverage of a labor helpline to ensure it meets the needs of workers and aligns with the goals and resources of the Labor Inspectorate. Before determining the scope and coverage of the helpline, it is essential to have a comprehensive understanding of the needs and challenges faced by workers. This can be achieved through research, surveys, and consultations with workers, trade unions, and other relevant stakeholders. By gathering information on the most common issues faced by workers, such as wage disputes, working conditions, and occupational safety, the helpline can be tailored to address these specific concerns effectively. Based on the research and consultations, it is important to identify the key labor issues that the helpline will focus on. These issues may vary depending on the specific context and industry, but some common areas of concern include wage and salary disputes, working conditions, discrimination and harassment, contractual disputes, and social protection. Wage and salary disputes. Many workers face issues related to unpaid wages, underpayment, or delayed payments. The helpline can provide guidance on wage laws, help workers calculate their entitlements, and assist in resolving disputes with employers. Working conditions. Workers often encounter problems related to long working hours, lack of breaks, unsafe working conditions, and inadequate health and safety measures. The helpline can provide information on labor laws and regulations, as well as guidance on reporting and addressing unsafe working conditions. Discrimination and harassment. Workers may experience discrimination or harassment based on their gender, race, religion, or other protected characteristics. The helpline can offer support, advice, and referrals to relevant authorities or organizations that specialize in addressing such issues. Contractual disputes. Many workers face challenges related to their employment contracts, including unfair terms, non-compliance with contractual obligations, or wrongful termination. The helpline can provide guidance on employment rights, contract interpretation, and dispute resolution mechanisms. Social protection. Workers may require information and assistance regarding access to social protection programs, such as health insurance, pension schemes, and unemployment benefits. The helpline can provide guidance on eligibility criteria, application procedures, and support in navigating the social protection system. Once the key labor issues have been identified, it is important to define the target audience for the helpline. This includes determining the specific groups of workers that the helpline will serve, such as formal sector workers. The helpline can focus on workers in the formal sector, including those employed in industries such as manufacturing, construction, and services. These workers may have access to legal protections and employment contracts, but still require support and guidance. Informal sector workers. The helpline can also cater to workers in the informal sector, who often face greater vulnerabilities and lack legal protections. These workers may include street vendors, domestic workers, and agricultural laborers. Migrant workers. Migrant workers face unique challenges, including language barriers, exploitation, and limited knowledge of their rights. The helpline can provide specialized support and information tailored to the needs of migrant workers. Vulnerable groups. The helpline should also consider the needs of vulnerable groups, such as women, youth, persons with disabilities, and marginalized communities. It is important to ensure that the helpline is accessible and responsive to the specific challenges faced by these groups. In addition to defining the target audience, it is crucial to determine the geographical coverage of the helpline. This includes identifying the regions, cities, or specific areas where the helpline will operate. factors to consider when determining geographical coverage include population density. The helpline should prioritize areas with a high concentration of workers to ensure maximum impact and utilization of resources. Industrial hubs. Areas with significant industrial activity and a large number of workers should be given priority to address the specific labor issues prevalent in those industries. Remote and rural areas. It is important to consider the needs of workers in remote and rural areas who may face unique challenges and have limited access to support services. The helpline can play a crucial role in bridging this gap and providing assistance to workers in these areas. Urban centers. Urban areas often have a diverse workforce and may experience a higher volume of labor-related issues. The helpline should consider establishing a presence in urban centers to cater to the needs of workers in these areas. When determining the scope and coverage of the helpline, it is essential to strike a balance between available resources and the expected demand for services. Considerations include budget and staffing. The resources allocated to the helpline, including the budget and staffing, will influence the scope and coverage. It is important to ensure that the helpline is adequately resourced to handle the expected volume of inquiries and provide timely and effective support to workers. Call volume projections. Based on research and consultations, it is possible to estimate the expected call volume and demand for helpline services. This information can help in determining the necessary resources and capacity required to meet the anticipated demand. Scaling up. It is important to have a plan for scaling up the helpline's operations if the demand exceeds initial projections. This may involve increasing staffing, expanding operating hours, or establishing additional helpline centers in different locations. By carefully determining the scope and coverage of the labor helpline, the Labor Inspectorate can ensure that the helpline effectively addresses the needs of workers and provides them with the necessary support and guidance. This will contribute to the overall success and impact of the helpline in promoting workers' rights and improving labor conditions.